Welcome back to the Growth Hacking Culture podcast. Today, we are diving into a critical conversation that impacts not only the future of work, but also the very foundation of how we prepare the next generation of leaders. Studies from organizations like McKinsey and Harvard Business Review point to a persistent gap between the leadership capabilities of graduates and the actual demands of today's organizations. Employers increasingly report a need for leaders who can foster innovation, navigate the ambiguity, and build resilient teams in the face of this constant disruption. This raises a critical question. Yes, is traditional leadership education effectively bridging this divide, or is it time for a fundamental reevaluation of curriculum and pedagogy to ensure graduates are truly prepared to lead in the 21st century? Joining us today to unpack this vital topic is a distinguished voice in the field, Dr. Cedric B. Howard. Dr. Howard brings a wealth of experience and insightful perspectives, particularly highlighted in his latest book, Unshakable Leadership, that I highly recommend. We will be exploring the key shifts driving the need for change, the gaps that exist between academic preparation and real-world demands, and the fundamental responsibility of educational institutions and corporates in shaping future leaders. We are also going to spend some time in the crucial skills young graduates need to thrive and the most effective ways to cultivate those skills. So get ready to have your assumptions challenged, wiped out, and your understanding deepened as we explore the business priorities to rethink leadership education with Dr. Cedric B. Howard. Welcome, Cedric. It is wonderful to have you today to have this discussion. And what I like about your profile, Cedric, is that you got it all. You got this academical depth to understand what really universities are doing to foster the education of future leaders, and you have these
Yes.
corporate insights. So that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. It is a joy to join you today. And I think that is really, at the core of the question and, our conversation today. How do you take the theory and make it applicable to address the ever-evolving um, workforce demands and ever-evolving issues that most organizations are dealing with in today's society?
Cedric, I got a little bit like impressed that I usually take as interns in my company twice per year
Uh-huh.
a couple of students in university. And we spend some time having classes or trainings or discussions about soft skills.
Yes.
And in most of the cases, these guys, they have never seen any professor in their university teaching them something that is going to be useful. When
Hmm.
a lot of people claims soft skills, human skills, or whatever you want to call it, it's even more important today than even in the past. I think that AI has reshaped a little bit the positioning of human brains in corporates,
Yeah.
and they still don't universities are not investing on in the soft skills. What is your
Yeah.
about it?
So, many universities have what I call, I have a psychology background, a social psychology background, as well as being an educator. And there's a terminology that we refer to in psychology and medicine called scotomas. Scotoma is actually a blind spot.
Mm,
And many universities have blind spots in part because we are steeped in tradition and top-down leadership. And in most organizations today, you're dealing with four generations. You may be dealing with someone who's, 80, all the way down to someone who's entering the workforce at 18, 19, and 20. And you have to have um, in many ways, the complexity, but yet the simplicity to communicate with people throughout, your organization. And so young leaders are coming into the workforce steeped in what they know, the theory, and they're not very steeped in what I consider to be the people skills, the functional skills that are the connective tissue, because they have the blind spots, they have the knowledge, and there's a difference between knowledge and application. Many of today's graduates can talk about leadership, but few of them have actually practiced leadership or practiced organization development in any meaningful way. And that is where the gap is happening. And so, oftentimes there's a gap in emotional intelligence, there's a gap in resiliency and understanding how to deal with pressure. There's a gap in the ability to give and receive feedback and to make strategic decisions for your organization. And I think that's where we have to do a better job in the academy across the world in addressing those gaps, because that is what is necessary in order to lead an organization in a positive, productive manner.
You know what? You have mentioned a word that I really love, this story about blind spots.
Yeah.
So the big question is, shouldn't students in university be studying self-awareness or practicing self-awareness? In fact, studying self-awareness, I don't think that you have to study, but that you have to practice self-awareness.
Yeah. Well, I think that is critical and important. But when you understand the function of the academy, most of your, especially, I am a tenured faculty member, and so when you're a tenured faculty, you get promoted based upon your intellectual prowess, your ability to publish and to teach. Notice there's not application. Most faculty members don't teach a course until they're in, at the very least, have their job as an assistant professor. And so you're learning how to teach, and that's what you're rewarded for. So when you talk about awareness, um, I think it's important for me to kind of clarify, and this is extremely important. When I'm working with organizations, I say the process that you undertake determines the product that you produce. In the academy, the process leads to permanency, what we call tenure. In order to get tenure, you got to produce articles and or write chapters for books. If you notice, application is not a part of that. And understanding how to apply the theory is not a part of that. And I think that's where we have to tweak the tenure process in order to incorporate not just service, but are you able to be apply the theory or to demonstrate that your students actually know how to apply the theory that you're teaching them as a part of the pedagogy. That is a tweak that we have to have, and that self-awareness is extremely important to eliminate or marginalize the blind spots that we have created within the academy.
Hmm. I have the impression sometimes certain kids will have advantages when, for instance, their parents are wealthy. Then you learn a little bit more because they spend time with the kid, they are present, they observe how they interact in the social world, in businesses, and they get to acquire in an easier manner these soft skills that are necessary to thrive at work. For instance, if I look back to my um, growth. I didn't live so much with my parents. My parents were hardworking blue collars. So
Mm.
I had a disadvantage that I realized during university compared to my wealthier friends. I didn't know
Mm.
how to behave in society, basically, Cedric. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but it's about me, so I don't care.
Ah,
Uh,
yeah.
so is is it really a problem? So the question is it really a problem to rethink leadership education today, or to rethink the soft skills that of young talent getting out of university? Or because we speak about it for 20 years. So I've been working for such a long time. We have been speaking about this need for soft skills or leadership skills for so many years, and nothing has changed. So the question is it really a problem? You, as you have been interacting with organizations because of your own practice, what is the feeling that you have? Is it really a problem or it can wait?
No, I think it is an urgent problem. One that, if I'm, I have a flourishing executive consulting business because of it. And I think that the reason it is a problem is because we're steeped in tradition, we're steeped in culture. I'll oftentimes say that the reward system of the training process is really slanted towards theory and not the application and or the administration of that particular theory. And I kind of give a great example that I learned very early in my career. I have a close friend um, whose mother is was a servant for a very affluent family in San Francisco. And he had a chance because he was a child to be exposed to the things that family was exposed to. So I oftentimes say that it's not necessarily about being coming from affluent family. It is a family that provides exposure.
Yep.
And so he tells the story of growing up and, you know, how because his family, his mother was a servant, actually lived in the servant, household. He went to the same schools as, you know, the people that his mother worked for. But it was a completely different experience. He said, you know, he's coming there to learn about history. He's coming there to learn about, places in the world and geography, and they're pulling out their books and they're saying, well, I don't need to look in a book. I can show you a picture when I'm at the Great Pyramid, or I'm at, the Nile River, or I'm in this location or that location, or I'm at, the Eiffel Tower. It was a very different experience. And so I would say from, if we want to learn a lesson, it is how do we take the opportunity to provide exposure to more disadvantaged or underprivileged students? How do we use internships? How do we use study abroads? How do we have experiences where they're able to touch and to have a very strong visceral reaction because they can actually see, those particular situation circumstances? I know personally, as a first generation college student, my life is very different than my kid's life. My daughter's in the medical field, and I never forget when she came and said, Dad, I want to spend the summer studying medicine in Italy. I said, well, you're going to practice here in America. She says, yes, there's different techniques in Italy that I can learn that I can bring back in my practice. And that is something that has bode well for her when she is able to talk about different medical techniques and application of various processes and procedures. She has a different perspective than someone who just studied United States. And so I say that what we have to address, and what I would say is there has to be a shared responsibility between the university and corporate entities to
Hmm.
create an environment where real life testing and real life application is happening. And then we need to rewrite our systems and our systems thinking in order to incorporate those real life application experiences into the curriculum that we're offering to students.
Hmm. I like this example that you gave about Italy. I had that discussion with one of my older daughter, by the way, Cedric, but she mentioned that in Italy, boys are cuter. That was the reason.
And whatever is the draw, you take the draw and you take advantage of the opportunity.
Tell me, in your experience, so if we are talking about reshuffling or prioritizing what needs to be taught, uh,
Mhm.
where do you see the biggest gap in leadership skills that graduates possess and the skills organizations truly need? Because in your book, you mentioned a couple of skills that I found it quite powerful and really needed.
Yeah, I would say there are really two skills that I think that I highlight in the book that I think are applicable associate leadership skill. And that's resiliency and strategic thinking, um, critical to any organization. Resiliency because graduates who enter the workforce should understand how to shape the rapidly changing environments and uncertainty. There's workforce demands. I mean, as we kind of speak, there's uncertainty in the global economy. How you manage that as a leader. And are you positioning yourself in order to be a proactive leader, or are you just responding to the situations that's been presented to you? I oftentimes say that I mentioned in the book that leaders need to have the ability to bounce back, to stay focused while they're under pressure, because there will be pressure points that hit them at all points of time. And the ability to remain calm also provides a grounding mechanism for your particular organization. And then I think there's strategic thinking, and not just from the perspective of making decision from a one-dimensional manner, taking time to be an active listener, listen to comprehend, not to respond. Because when you comprehend, there's context that provides clarity to the content that you're receiving in order that you can leverage that in order to make a much more informed decision for you as a leader and for your organization.
Hmm. These skills that you just mentioned, in fact, I'm just wondering, are they really skills or are they meta skills? Which means is almost like, should we teach us how to do things or how to learn to students or young graduates that enter into the corporate? Uh, so having mental processes so that they, for whatever situation, they know how to learn new skills rapidly because they have a mental process, like a checklist. And maybe that could be the core of the responsibility for universities to create these mental processes. Things like, imagine, Cedric, nobody talks about mindfulness in university. We were talking about mindfulness just before this recording.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But isn't it something that is necessary, that we have the like a toolbox that then we pick that and then we can use it in real situations? So, and then the bridging to real case scenarios is brought by the corporate inside of the university. So there is the mental processes in university and the applications that are brought by the corporate. Is that a potential solution?
Yeah, I think it is. But part of this means that we have to reshape our pedagogy, and our approaches to teaching, arts of teaching, and align it with the leadership skills that are applicable for the corporate setting. And that only occurs when for instance, if you are in a profession such as law or medicine or engineering, you have real life simulations to prepare you to come out to be an effective engineer, or lab for medicine, or they provide these mock classrooms or courtrooms for you to study law. Um, are we doing this for business leaders? Are we providing real life scenarios and projects, and peer coaching and mentoring for them as a part of their educational experience so they're to come out and be effective leaders? I think that is key for us to develop the leaders, fairly early on. Because when they're in real life experiences, we're able to give them critical feedback, and reflection, and help to shape who they are when they're in the learning stage, not after they have received their credentials and they say, okay, now I'm ready to go out and be a leader. And they haven't really learned how to follow. I'm going to give you a great example. And I've been in this profession now for 30 years, and I've been, as you know from my resume, been viewed as a content expert and a leader within the profession. But I learned an important lesson from my son. My son just graduated college this past May, so a year ago, and he is in the Navy. And while he was in the Navy, he was going through the Reserve Officer Training Course. So he was considered to be a midshipman. And the Navy does something unlike all other branches of the military in the United States. And so the Navy, all the other branches send you home for the summer. You may have 2 or 3 weeks of training, you fine. The Navy actually takes your entire summer and they determine what job or what family job you're going to do, and they actually train you for that job. So the moment that you graduate and you become commissioned, day one, you can report to the fleet or you can report to your ship and you're ready to go. You're ready to take on command. Day one. So they've trained you as a part of the learning process to put you in scenarios, to put you in real life, give you real life projects. So, you're actually on an aircraft carrier or you're on a sub for the summer. You're learning the jobs. You're learning how to navigate as a part of the educational process so that once you're actually ready to fulfill that mandate, you're not learning how to be a leader. You're not learning those soft skills. You're not learning those transferable skills. You're actually able to apply, and it becomes part of the overall educational process. And that is something I would say to any person in the academy. We have to think about what are the real life experiences that we need to undertake. Because if you practice it, you would actually demonstrate it within your profession. And I think that was a lesson that I learned with me, and that's an example I oftentimes give. So they're ready to go because they need to have a ready leadership force, and that is a critical for them versus other branches of the military that once you graduate, now they send you to officer candidacy school to teach you how to be a leader. The Navy says, no, we want you to be a leader the moment you are commissioned and ready for the ranks.
And that's super good. I didn't know that, in fact, Cedric. So that's
Yeah.
a good learning. Um, let's jump to the corporate world.
Mhm.
I spent some time there, so I cannot remember anymore what I learned in university, Cedric. This is how old I am. um, in the corporate world, what pedagogical approaches do you believe are most effective in teaching and developing leadership skills in a corporate setting? You have mentioned certain of the uh, critical skills like resilience, confidence, strategic thinking, and inspiring results. Some of them are well explained in your book, but we need to change the way we teach them. It cannot be that it was like back in our days when we were in university. So how should we change it, the pedagogy
Yeah.
of skills?
Yeah. I think, when you think about the pedagogical approaches, I think it's important to recognize that people don't grow from theory alone. They grow through feedback, reflection, analysis, and doing things in a safe environment. I mean, we're both parents. And we realize that when we create a safe environments, our kids learn best.
Mm.
Even if they make a mistake, part of making a mistake is actual growth opportunity because they've learned that if they have failed to do something, they're not a failure.
Mm.
And we need to create that same environment within the corporate entity for younger professionals that are coming in so they're not afraid to make mistakes and grow from that. I also think that we need to incorporate more real life case studies, not just about successes. So successes is good, but I have learned that as a successful entrepreneur, as a successful educator, as a successful corporate consultant, I have learned more from my mistakes than I have from my successes. Because if I'm doing something right, I'm going to continue to do that.
Mm.
But when I make a mistake, I realize that's an opportunity for growth because I got to retool, I got to relearn. An important lesson that was taught to me when I was in college is something that I apply, and I think is applicable here. It's important to learn, unlearn, and relearn often.
Mhm.
So you may have learned something as it relates to in your textbook. Oftentimes you have to unlearn that in order to relearn how to do it in actual real life application. And that becomes the dilemma. And so if we're able to give role plays and project-based learning, that actually shapes the leadership ethos and environment so that young professionals and corporate entities are able to be much more successful and efficient throughout the ranks. And the last thing I have to say is never, never marginalize the effects of mentoring and succession planning.
Mm.
Um, I give an example that I didn't actually put in my book, but I give an example when I worked for with a company from Asia, especially Japanese-based companies. We have a 500-year strategic plan, 500 years. And so their ethos is how do I build my successor in order to take on my responsibility, but elevate the company to the next level. So they're not afraid of giving to the people that they have hired to bring on because they realize that strategically that's critical for organizational success. When you focus on young leaders and help to ground them in purpose, self-awareness, and align their values with the organization values, you get a young professional who believes in trust and who's driven to make a difference. Because it's not about formal titles, especially with this generation. It's about purpose and impact.
Hmm, that's right. You have mentioned four things that are essential in order to learn incorporates. You have mentioned feedback, reflection, safe environment, and did I come? Now I cannot read anymore what I write. There was four things.
Probably mentoring.
Indeed. So it is very difficult for corporates to put a system in place for mentoring and coaching. I can tell you, they will try to do it, but it will be a check on in the box. It will be a failure in most of the corporates that I have seen that they have tried. It wasn't successful. Most, not all, because of cost or because if I'm spending time as a coach or a mentor, this is not rewarded. I'm incentivized on results, and I'm not incentivized on how much time I'm spending in grooming the next generation of leaders. Um, so it's very difficult for corporates to implement it. A system that really foster this growth mindset inside of the company and puts in place the systems so that people can really grow. Now, AI is booming. Uh, what is
Correct.
your thought about the use of AI in order to cover these parts of feedback, self-reflection, safe being in a safe environment? Um, what is your thoughts about it? Should we completely ditch it, or should we look at it as a complement of how I grow? So if I need, I can go to my Gemini, ChatGPT, and ask some questions, put the context, and nobody's there to judge me. And sometimes it's very good to give me feedback because it's going to be listening to sort down of my conversations. This is super easy, by the way, to set it up to so that you can put it on to listen to my conversation and give me feedback about how am I interacting with other people.
I think it's critical to embrace AI. Artificial intelligence is not going anywhere. I think we were talking before the podcast, and you just mentioned pertaining to a book that I just published on AI and mindfulness. What we need to do is actually embrace and understand AI and the positive and effects that AI can have. Organizations today are desperate for people who can build trust quickly and adapt on the fly and inspire, followership. But these are not skills that are often cultivated within an academic environment. AI, through professional development, can give you feedback, can give you strategic thinking tools in order that to help your leaders to develop quicker and in a safer way. Because when you're mentoring them and you're teaching them about systems thinking and ethical decision making, sometimes it can be a little abrupt and to the point, pushing a person. But if you can use AI as a reflective tool to say this is a part of a tool to support you, just like you would use AI to correct grammar or you use AI to do searches. You do AIs to help to analyze your customer base. In the same way, you can use AI to help develop skills within your workforce, but are the desired skills associated with the values, the mission, and the direction of your organization. So I
Hmm.
think we should embrace it because it's not going anywhere. It's just going to be much more expedited. I'm old enough to remember when when we first introduced spreadsheets like Excel.
Hmm.
And people were like, well, so why are you using a computer to put the numbers in and you can write a formula? How do we trust that, this number is going to be right on the spreadsheet? Well, let's put down the tablet and stop chipping the numbers in or look at the mistakes that was corrected versus just handwriting something. This is a part of how things have evolved. And I think AI just allows us to expedite some things that may not be obvious to us because we oftentimes as individuals, we emote. And when we have emotions, that leads to the blind spots, these scotomas that we talk about. Because scotomas are developed based upon four aspects: your habits, your attitudes, your beliefs, and your expectations.
Hmm.
And so if you have habits that have flaws, or you have an attitude or things are going to be a certain way, then you're going to have beliefs that are limited in certain aspects. And then you establish expectations to fulfill those beliefs. And that is fraught with limitations. AI will look through that because AI doesn't have emotions to say, hey, this is an area that you're very good at, and this is an area that you could potentially look at to grow and improve upon.
Absolutely. You made me think, Cedric, that before Excel in the spreadsheets world, there was something called
Mhm.
Quattro. Do you
Yes.
remember that? It just came to my mind. I had forgotten completely about that. I remember the floppy disk. I wasn't using it because I was still in school, but I, I remember this Quattro. By the way, so your message is clear. Let's embrace touch, play with AI, and that should be something that employees should be encouraged, and employees and students should be encouraged to do it. But now there is like this little thing or trigger that makes that shift from okay, I will try it, and I'm really curious and passionate about it. So and sometimes companies are limiting, saying, "Yeah, we don't know." You mentioned that the same situation with the spreadsheets. So we don't know if we should be using it. That there is confidentiality. So why don't companies use this opportunity to encourage curiosity, discovery, and put in place just a program about ethics so that people understand what is the ethics of AI, so that they understand what could be not good to do with AI, but for the other things, go and make it happen.
Well, make it happen. Oftentimes I think the rollout of AI, and quite honestly, I think, cinema and film have really shaped how we view AI because AI for artificial intelligence have been viewed from the perspective that it's kind of ominous and something's going to happen. It's going to take over the world.
Hmm.
It's going to eliminate your job. It's going to, create a virus and it's going to take on all the computers and it's going to kill all the humans. I
Hmm.
mean, we've kind of sensationalized it, but we really have not taken time to understand the ecosystem around AI and the applications, especially the positive applications of AI. And I think that's where we have to get over our own um, um, sense of scotomas as an industry and as a corporate body to say what are the applications? Because just like we said that there's concerns, we need to have a matrix of can you understand and operate an AI system?
Hmm.
Because automation is occurring. Any effective corporation is use automation, especially around this business analytics and business practices, so Does your sales staff, does your leaders, does your managers, does the C-suite understand that AI could be used as a powerful tool to leverage and to help you test real life theory and application in order to maximize its effect on your particular organization. We just have to embrace it. The example that I oftentimes say in school teaches you the strokes. Like if you're swimming, it teaches you the strokes.
Mm.
AI and real life is going to throw you in a deep end and says, do you know how to swim? Because it's going to hit you. And what you have to say is, okay, I'm going to use AI as a flow until I learn how to practice these strokes in the deep end. I'm going to use AI to test my theory. I'm going to create a test environment to use AI as a part of research and development. I'm going to use AI as a part of as a matrix for professional development and evaluation of my team. I'm just going to embrace it until I feel comfortable in order to take off the waiter and swim comfortably and with confidence in the deep end of the pool, so that I know that I can survive and AI is not a threat to me.
Hmm. You're totally right. So AI is one of the biggest opportunities that we have in order to learn, improve our skills. We should embrace it, though the little thing that we should have in our mind that, and you mentioned it, in fact, the Terminator scenario where AI could kill the humankind. It's not AI that would kill humankind, it's other humans that could influence AI in order to kill or to be used in an unethical manner. And that's why I think understanding the ethics of AI is something that is quite important for everybody. Let's embrace it, but let's always validate, because today we have so many tools that could be used, which one are could be a little bit biased and which ones could don't have this bias. And we have the choice. And I think learning how to do a prompt to validate certain assumptions to see if there is a bias on one side or the other, it is quite important today.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. You know, and I think it's all part of also self-discovery. You
Mm.
think about leaders, and you think about an opportunity to use AI for the as a tool to support them and the organization. A key component that I mentioned in the book is that the principle of leading from within. That is critical. Knowing who you are, what you stand for, and leading with clarity and conviction. AI allows you to have that type of analysis to say, am I leading with a clear conviction and clarity across my organization? Am I assessing what I'm doing? And then to talk from the perspective of a shared vision is extremely important for leading a very dynamic organization, as most corporations are. And I say, just as a part of our conversation, talk about the idea, really embrace the idea that your outer impact can never exceed your inner capacity. And so you got to make sure that you feel comfortable with who you are as a leader. And AI, mentoring, leadership development, system thinking, self awareness, self reflection, self confidence are all critical for developing an internal capacity and capability and confidence so you can lead with clarity and conviction as a leader.
Hmm. I love this, and I think it's part of the framework that you discuss in your book, Unshakable Leadership. So, I really recommend to people to go and grab a copy. Um, I have one last question. So let's imagine that we have prioritized what we need, the type of skills that we need to work, the methodology that we are going to use in order to learn them, maybe sometimes leveraging on artificial intelligence. How do we measure the effectiveness of this eh, either education program or educational journey? Because it doesn't have to be something that corporates are giving you. Is your choice today. Having an education costs cheap if you don't go for titles
Mm.
in American universities. Sorry for the joke. um, how can we assess effectiveness of leadership education programs in corporate, in universities, and how can we measure it? What metrics can we use?
Yeah, I think we have to go beyond, test scores, and we have to go beyond, kind of the numbers. And we have to get into some of the qualitative aspects. One of the measures and metrics that I oftentimes say is when you have implemented these, then people feel a high level of satisfaction in their job. And they feel that seen and valued and validated. Those are characteristics and quality you don't necessarily think about with put and productivity, but they have a critical role in output and activity. And I think that's where we have to begin to look at what are desired outcomes. And outcomes may not necessarily be, the numbers. It could be the quality of experience that employees are having within our corporation, within our company, because when they're happy, they're going to work harder for you. They're going to be much more dedicated. And most importantly, they're going to be committed to the overall organizational success.
Hmm.
Because we can't lead from the perspective of being an authority. We have to lead from the perspective of influence, because influence and social intelligence really matters with the younger generations.
Cedric, it was really lovely to spend time with you and learn from your book, Unshakable Leadership. Tell me, how do we do if somebody wants to reach you out, have a chat with you, get to know a little bit more about your practice in consulting, your experience in education? How do they reach you out?
Yeah, thank you. So on social media, I'm Cedric B. Howard, CEDRC B. Letter B, Howard, HOWARD, whether it is LinkedIn, whether it is on any social media platform, Cedric B. Howard. My website is cedricbhoward.com.
Mm.
And so you can reach out to me on any platform, and if you're looking for any one of my books, you can go, of course, to Amazon and put in Cedric B. Howard, and or you can go to my actual bookstore, which is Books, BOOKS, by BY, Cedric B. Howard. And so, I'm welcome to connect with you and look forward to this journey together.
Cedric, so I'm going to be putting the link to your LinkedIn profile, your website, and of course about the link to your book, Unshakable Leadership, The Resilient Path to Confident Strategic Thinking and Inspiring Results. It was lovely to spend time with you. Thank you very much for making it to the Growth Hacking Culture podcast.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you.
It was really nice. Thank you.